Hey guys, what's going on? Jason here, and it's been a while since we've been out in the garage. We've been dealing with some pretty brutal heat here in southern Indiana. It's been 100 plus heat index. We're talking 107, 108 degrees, a lot of humidity. So it's been pretty nasty, and I haven't been out in the garage. I just have to admit that when it's that hot outside, it kind of messes with my thinking and don't want to do it, so I didn't do it. But we're back out here now, and we're going to start tackling a couple more projects on the YJ. Now, it's been a while since we've done anything to it, so I thought the best way to go ahead and get started was to do a progress recap video. So we'll go ahead and go through some of the things that we've done. Let's go ahead and look at some of the clips of where we are now, and when we come back, we'll go ahead and talk about some plans and what I'm doing next to it. So make sure you stick around. Here we go. Alright, what a pain that was. All right, now the next thing that we've got to do is we've got to prepare to go ahead and put our track bar extension bracket on here. It came with our lift kit. A couple things that we got to do is we're going to have to open this hole up to 1/2 inch, and then we're also going to have to bolt the bracket up and mark a hole here for a bolt to go through. If you've never done anything like enlarging a hole before, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can get a taper, which is what I recommend, but unfortunately I don't have one. So we're going to do it with a regular drill bit. Now, if you're not careful, this is what we call a wrist breaker. Your drill bit is going to grab, since it's such a small area that you're trying to cut, and it's going to try to pull your wrist in. So make sure that if you're using this, use a drill with an overrunning clutch. That way, if it starts to grab, it doesn't pop back on you and hurt you. So just be safe and go slow, and you'll be able to enlarge this with an actual drill bit. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, and get our bracket bolted up, mark it, and drill through it. All right guys, now that we've got our hole drilled for our bracket, we're gonna go ahead and test fit it real quick, see where we're at, and provided everything's okay, we're gonna go ahead and bolt it up. Oh, perfect. Lines up exactly like it should. So we're gonna go ahead and get it all put together. All right guys, it's time to go ahead and put the steering on, and what I wanted to do real quick is just come over here and show you guys the difference between the stock steering and the stuff that we just picked up. So we picked up stock replacement steering from Crown Automotive. It's in great shape. It comes with storage caps on all the ball joints to go ahead and protect them. You can see here that our steering is in pretty rotten shape. Our stock stuff's got ripped boots. The ball joints themselves are very, very loose. So it's time to go ahead and replace it. Now, we're not gonna throw this away. We will keep it for a trail spare just in case something happens and we end up bending steering or anything like that. It should do fine to get us off the trail. It also comes with a new steering stabilizer, which we will have a full spare for because our lift kit also came with a steering stabilizer. So bonus there. So now that we've got our steering in place, we're going to go ahead and torque these two nuts for the drag link down to 65 foot-pounds. Alright guys, so now that we've got our steering linkage and everything installed, we're going to go ahead and install our JKS telescoping track bar. We're going to start by, of course, reading the instructions here. Everything seems to be pretty straightforward. We mount the chassis in first, and then we go ahead and mount the other side to our track bar bracket. So let's go ahead and get it done. So we got a bushing on both sides of the track bar. We run the track bar bolt through, and then we go ahead and put our nut on the other side. Relatively straightforward. We're going to go ahead and tighten this stuff down. Torque specs here in the kit are 75 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and just loosely tighten it down. We're not going to torque it down to spec completely. The reason is the vehicle is not on tires, so there's a couple of torque specs up front here that we need to wait for to make sure that the actual Jeep is on tires and settled on the suspension, because if we do it beforehand we can actually cause the suspension to bind. So I'm just going to go ahead and snug this track bar down and step back and take a look at it. We got our track bar installed. We also got our new steering linkage installed. We got our new diff cover installed and our track bar extension bracket installed. You can see here that these run parallel, which is extremely important to making sure that you don't have any bump steer. Now that wouldn't be possible without using this track bar extension bracket. So make sure that if you have a lift kit and you do get this track bar extension bracket for the front end, that you utilize that. Keeps everything in check and keeps everything lined up. So now that we've got the sway bar installed, we can go ahead and put our track bar bolt back in. Now we had to back this out to make sure that we had clearance to get the bracket up. And I'm also, in the meantime, going to switch it out from a crimp nut to a nylock nut. Alright guys, so if you take a look here, what I've done is I went ahead and just put some hubs and some wheels and tires on the Jeep. And the next thing I'm going to do, now that we got a little bit of weight on the Jeep, is go ahead and adjust these out. Now it's important to remember that this is not going to be the final set for these. These are actually going to be adjusted again once we have all the weight on the vehicle. The vehicle doesn't have any drivetrain or anything in it, so right now everything's just kind of going to be mock-up. So I'm going to go ahead and install these sway bar end links. First part of the process is to go ahead and set the bullet pin into the sway bar facing outward, nut facing inward, and then kind of adjust to see where we're at from there. Once again, we're just trying to get them to fit right now. This isn't going to be something that stays like this. We're going to have to adjust them again. And special thanks to my neighbor for deciding to mow their yard for the first time in about 2 months. It's awesome. So now that I've got the end links installed, I'm going to go ahead and install the front shocks. I haven't installed the rear shocks yet. I got to do a YJ shock relocator on there. But those are going to be kind of an episode all their own, just because of the unique nature of the modifications that got to be made to it. Now I bought some YJ shock relocators, but they're not exactly as advertised. They're going to take some pretty good modifications to do. So we're going to go ahead and do the front shocks and a front steering stabilizer right now, and see what we can do about getting this front end all the way buttoned up. Now this is a Rubicon Express rear shock relocator for a YJ. One of the problems when you put the wedges in to straighten up the rear axle and get the pinion angle back on a YJ is it makes your shock bodies hit the actual axle tube itself. So Rubicon Express came out with these. Now these are great in theory, but things are not all as they seem. These don't exactly line up the way they're supposed to. You've got one bolt here, and you've got this right here, which is supposed to be a double shear bracket, through the actual shock mount itself, but it doesn't exactly work like that. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so if you see here, we can put our bolt through the back, but once we put our bolt through the back, this hole right here does not line up on the side. This has been welded in the wrong spot. So we're going to have to move this sleeve in here physically rearward to get it to line up. I don't know how this got made wrong. I've watched a couple YouTube videos that have actually talked about this, so I guess I'm not the only one that's had these mismade. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go ahead and cut these spot welds on the inside right here, physically pull this sleeve, and then we're going to go ahead and bolt the back in, mark where the hole actually lines up, and then go ahead and re-drill it and re-weld that. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we went ahead and just cut those two spot welds out real quick and got the sleeve out of there. Now I'm going to go ahead and bolt this thing up and see how it lines up. So guys, now you can see a little bit better what I'm talking about. If you look at this bracket right here, you see how far off that bolt hole is. Now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go ahead and scribe this hole right here. And we're going to have to drill and move that sleeve, re-weld it in. Now I'm assuming that that's where it is, because you might not be able to get this bolt in and out, but we can always run the bolt in from the back side and just put the nut on the inside. So we're going to go ahead and scribe that hole out and move that sleeve so we can get a double shear bracket on this as well. Alright guys, so now we're all caught up on the videos. We got the front end of the frame put together last video. Steering and everything's on. We still got a few things to touch up and a few things to tighten up, but we can't do that until the suspension's under a little bit more of a load. So now it's time to switch over to the actual donor vehicle, and we're going to go ahead and start stripping it. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and run the engine one last time. Number one, to have a little bit of peace of mind that it still runs all right and everything, because we might end up selling it. And it's always good to have a little bit of footage of it running, especially if you're going to try to sell it out of a vehicle. But number two, just to let everything lubricate one more time so the engine's not dry when it goes into storage. Now, it might not be much of a consideration to some people, but I just think it's good practice to go ahead, let everything get lubricated, pull it up to temperature, make sure everything's all right one last time before we go ahead and start stripping everything off, and we're in a kind of, you know, can't go back situation. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get the engine started up, and then we're going to start pulling the front end off the Jeep and start pulling some other parts out of our donor. guys, so I guess the first spot in all this is going to be to take the hood and start pulling the front end off. Now your radiator is bolted to your grill, so we got to separate all that, but we're going to take the hood first and then pull the strut rods here for the front grill, and we'll go ahead and get all this pulled off, and then we can pull the fenders off after that. But nothing to it but to do it. Let's get it started. So just in case you guys are wondering, this is T40 on an impact to get these Torx bits out of the hood. Pull the back two out, not the front Alright guys, now that we've got the hood and the strut rods off, it's time to go ahead and start pulling stuff off of this grill so we could take the front end off. You got a couple J nuts here. We're going to pull these nuts out for the actual radiator and let it fall back. You can also pull them off here if you want. We'll see which one's the best option for us, but we got to go ahead and pull this off and let this radiator lay back so we can go ahead and start pulling the nuts on the inside of the bolts on the inside of the fender here to grab the front grill out. So next we're going to pull off the radiator. Now this radiator is shot, it's leaking at the bottom, so I'm not really worried about being delicate with it or anything like that. As far as the transmission lines, we'll probably replace those anyway. They're kind of junk, so. got our horn here, which what we'll do with this is we will go ahead and we'll pull that 1/2 inch bolt out and leave the horn hang with the harness. .7/16. Alright guys, so as you can see, we got everything pulled off the front end of the Jeep. We got the grill removed and we got the fenders removed. Everything went pretty easy, pretty simple. I did snap the bottom 2 bolts off here on both sides, so when we go to clean up the tub and start making our modifications to it, we'll have to do something about that, but that's not a big deal. The fenders are going to be junk. We're not going to keep those. We are going to keep a lot of the brackets and stuff that bolt to the fenders. So I'm going to have to go through individually and kind of separate all the stuff I need and the stuff that I don't. The engine, I got a canopy over it here just to kind of protect it a little bit. It's not going to matter. I think we're going to end up selling it off and keeping the transmission transfer case. But this is pretty much it, guys. I mean, we got the thing stripped down. Next thing's probably going to be pulling the tub up off the frame. I think I'm going to leave the frame on jack stands and go ahead and pull everything off of it, and then kind of go back through and see if there's anything that I need on the frame. If not, I'll just pull the whole frame up onto a truck and go take it off the scrap or something like that. But thanks so much for stopping by. If you guys got any questions about how to do any of this, just leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as fast as I can. Like the video if you want to, but please subscribe to catch what's coming up next. We'll see you next time.